would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California. Member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. The first Monday of December. We are ever so close to Christmas. And of course, with it being December, we are going to start the month off right by handing out another $50 Amazon gift card. What better time, really, to get a $50 Amazon gift card than Christmas time? Hopefully fill up the stockings of someone you love just in time for the Christmas season. So we will be doing that. I'm going to draw for this month's winner at 5 p.m. Monday, December 5th. So make sure to get your name in. The best way to do that is to head on over to therebelbroker.com. Find the red button at the tippy top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. Give it a click. You'll be asked your email address a couple of different times. Make sure to use the same email address both times. Then answer the handful of questions, and you are good to go. You are officially entered. So what we'll do is go right at 5 o'clock Pacific time on December 5th. I will draw the winner from all those who have participated up until that point. And I will send that person an email. And once I get verification back from that person, obviously you need to be able to reply at your email address in order to win. And once I've gotten verification from that person that they have gotten the message and they're ready to get their $50 gift card, then I'll go ahead and announce it here on the show. So far, every time I've drawn someone, it's been a valid email address and it's worked out. But I just like to make sure everyone's aware that I do that to make sure I don't just automatically send off the $50 gift card without verifying that there's someone on the other end of the email first. So you need to be able to get the email, because in addition to it being what you're using to help the show, it's also the way you'll get your gift card. You'll get your gift card at that email address. So if you're using a dead end email address, there's really no way for me to get you the gift card because there's no way for me to contact you. So anyway, good luck. Congrats to the two people who have won so far in October and November. And good luck to all of you who will be in the mix for the drawing for this month. And I look forward to handing out $50 to some lucky listener. As always, there's other great things you can do at the website. There's plenty of places for you to support the show. You can go to the, I believe there's a section there now just titled Support the Show. And there's an Amazon store there. There's also going to be, and I think there is now, a limited listing of current show sponsors or ways to sponsor the show through using different services. Please do take advantage of that. Every little bit helps the show, and I've got so many things on the menu I want to offer down the road. It just requires me to have more time to devote, and the more support I get from my audience, the more that becomes possible. So thank you very much for those who have already taken time out of their busy schedules to give the show a little love in terms of following up with sponsors or purchasing things through the online store that's currently basically an Amazon store. Thank you very much for that. And of course, if you would like to join the Rebel Underground, where you're going to get access to all kinds of new content, or as the content gets developed, you're going to get word about it earlier. You're going to get your hands on content that's not going to be distributed through any other channel. So that's really going to be the only way you can get it, is by being a member of the Rebel Underground. Just text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's the word Rebel Broker, all one word, to the number 44222. You'll get a confirmation response so that you know that you're talking to the right list and on the other end, and just answer the prompt that when you get that to send off your email address, and then you are in. Okay. Anything else? Any other housekeeping things that I should make you aware of? I've reached out to our show listener and friend Scott Blasius up in San Francisco. We have been chatting back and forth a little bit about different investment opportunities in in Sacramento. So I'm actually planning on visiting him sometime in the next few weeks. We'll probably blitz up there on a Saturday. He's going to show me around some neighborhoods. And he doesn't know this yet, so maybe I should call him and ask him if he's okay with this first. But I'm toying with also making that one of the to YouTube clips, simply because it'd be a great way to use the medium of video in terms of showing the process that we're using to analyze neighborhoods, to figure out what areas we should focus our attention on. And Sacramento represents a pretty interesting opportunity, particularly for folks in California, since the price point is a lot more reasonable than other parts of California. I've mentioned before that in my local area, the average price, depending on what city you're in, ranges anywhere from about $700,000 all the way up to over $1 million if you go all the way up to San Francisco. And in San Jose, obviously, there's areas that are that expensive as well. So it's a nice change of pace to be able to go to some place like Sacramento where you can grab yourself a duplex for $300,000. There are ones that are more expensive than that in more desirable areas. But we'll take a look at all of that. We'll look at different neighborhoods, and Scott and I will sort of put our heads together and see if we can't find areas that make the most sense. And it'll be a great way for you to see how that stuff works out, simply because I'll be treating Scott like my team member, right? He's going to be the guy who has far more local knowledge than I do, and is going to be able to give me the input that any of you would need from your local expert. You always want to have good folks who can give you insights into various neighborhoods. There's only so much you're going to be able to learn. Now, and don't underestimate the power of what you can learn yourself online, between crime heat maps on True. And, my go-to place now has sort of become Trulia. When I'm looking at different areas, I am all about using that great little map that pops up when you're searching an area or you're searching for a specific property. They have this map that shows you not only where it's located, but you can click on a little icon that looks like a badge. That's going to give you a heat map relating to a number of crimes happening in the various areas. They've got them for education. They've got them for all kinds of different stuff. So it's a very cool tool, a great way to analyze an area before you ever get there. And it's really helped me sort of focus my attention on some areas that I think are a little bit more attractive than others. But again, stuff that you'll probably see come the new year, because we'll need time to go and do it and shoot the video and then edit it and sort of make it more poignant at the very least, so that we're not dealing with a lot of random stuff, but focusing on the information that's going to help you succeed to the best of your ability. Today's show is a little bit of a discussion of, well, not a little bit, a lot of a discussion relating to the employment numbers that came out last week. And it's always important to try to step back and see what you can really expect, because numbers like the unemployment numbers are ways for you to set expectations looking over the horizon. And that's what we're about, right? One of the things you want to be able to figure out is, where is the market going? What are indicators that I can look at today that should either make me feel very enthusiastic about what's potentially around the corner, or warn me about potential competition, or indicate to me that I'm going to see sales going up, or the number of buyers going up, or whatever. And big numbers like that tend to be things you want to know a little bit about. But here's the problem. They carry such a political element to them that oftentimes the headline that you get is going to be all you get. And I love the way the Twitterverse exploded, because that's such a politically hot potato to throw around. We've talked about the unemployment numbers before. We've talked about, it's not just about a single number. It's about the quality of jobs, the quantity of jobs, and it's also about this sort of game that gets played with the number of folks who are, quote unquote, in the employment pool. So I wanted to take a look at those numbers to help us decide a couple of things. One, should we take this as an indicator that over the horizon we are, or now, because the employment rate is supposed to be at 4.6%, right? That's the unemployment rate, 4.6%. Should we now anticipate that is going to reflect an increased number of buyers? Are those the kinds of jobs that are being created? And does that represent an actual increase in the number of folks who are out there with a job? And of course, this is going to be a different discussion in different parts of the country. I was speaking with someone here the other day who made a good point that in a lot of areas here in California, we're suffering from a shortage of nurses and engineers and teachers. And that all may be true in certain areas, but again, those cater to very specific folks. An entry-level job is not a teacher, and a teacher needs to get a certificate. In all the states I'm aware of, you need to go back to school and study for that. And the shortest I've ever heard it taking for someone to get their teaching credential is 2 years. So there's that. Nurses, same story. There may be a shortage of nurses, but you don't create nurses overnight. Those are folks who get higher levels of training and have to be licensed. So we may have a shortage of those, but that's hard to talk about in terms of the broader employment situation. Engineering jobs. Yeah, you know what? Here in the Bay Area, there are absolutely some demand for engineers. You can have a nice long conversation about how those positions get filled here in the Bay Area, but we want to try to keep this as something relating to what are we seeing the stage being set at, right? And getting into a specific of my area, while might be interesting for me and folks in my area, I really, really want to do is it kind of spark some thought on your end to determine what your local reality is. So there's going to be several stories I can link to this, but we're going to go ahead and start with some of the things that we can look at relating to this. First, and here's some of the Twitter stuff, right? Unemployment drops to 4.6%, lowest since 2007. And then that's sort of the headline for a lot of these tweets. And then all of them are relating to, we need to thank the current presidential folks and the current White House for doing this, which is another interesting standpoint you can take, I suppose. According to CNN Money, their comment was the unemployment rate dropped for three main reasons. The number of jobless workers decreased while the number of people with jobs increased. The total size of the labor force, which includes both employed and unemployed people, also decreased. Together, those three factors pushed the unemployment rate down. Quote, our best answer here is that more people stopped looking for work, according to Steve Chiavarone. Man, how do I come across all these names? Portfolio manager at Federated Investors. The headline numbers here are okay, but the underlying numbers are less rosy. And here's what's great. By paying a little bit better attention, we've talked before about what makes a good investor, right? And a lot of it is about taking a dispassionate look at numbers like this to try to tell the future. Now, can you absolutely succeed without overanalyzing like I tend to do a lot of these numbers? Sure. But I'm all about force multipliers, right? So if I know I'm going to go out and I'm going to invest in something, I want to be aware of things that at least have me throwing a few little steps into my process that help me leverage off of whatever I believe to be coming that most other folks don't. And I'll tell you what, the most successful entrepreneurs I know are the folks who get a feel for those things, who stay informed, kind of get an idea of what's likely coming down the pike, and then they make decisions that incorporate strategies. It doesn't mean they don't do things. It means they adjust the way they do things so that they're able to more capably adapt to what they anticipate might change. But they also stay nimble, right? You just try not to lock yourself into one strategy. Maybe you've got a strategy for what we think will happen, most likely, but then you've got a backup plan. If you start to see things move one direction or another that are divergent from what your expectations were, you've at least thought through a scenario where you have an exit strategy for that doesn't result in you losing money or having your investments turn on you. So just being aware of those things, right? Sometimes just being aware, just thinking about it to the point where you're making some adaptations for it without it freezing you, without you having the analysis paralysis happening that keeps you from actually taking actions that let you enjoy some level of success. So what this is hopefully going to do, if you're in an investment scenario and you have a potential to make $1 on an investment, by having this additional set of information, you're hopefully going to make $2 or $5. You're still going to come out on the plus side, hopefully, no matter what you do. But being aware of these kinds of things as a way to dramatically increase the probability that you're going to make more because you're making more informed decisions. Okay. So the next element to this, and it's something kind of hinted at by this guy at CNN without actually saying it, is the labor participation rate. Let's talk about the labor participation rate. It has been in decline steadily for the last 8 years. And that's basically the number of folks who get counted in the math that calculates the unemployment rate. And as you eliminate folks from that list, that means the unemployment number gets better and better because the folks, they are no longer counted as unemployed because they're out of the system, quote unquote. Now, the reason why I don't think that's logical to do, and I've stated this before, is because they are still a factor in the economic landscape of this calculation because they consume resources. Whether we like to admit it or not, even though they may not be receiving unemployment or whatever various things that they're claiming that they're not getting anymore in terms of unemployment, these are folks who are now on some other kind of assistance. Maybe not unemployment, but they're probably on some sort of welfare. They've had to go onto some other program. They are still consuming without contributing, right, in terms of labor in the workforce. Doesn't mean they're bad people. I'm just saying that when we're making this calculation for unemployment, not counting those people doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes sense if you're a politician who wants to crow about a number that you're trying to, again, so much of this seems to boil down to artificially shifting numbers up or down. But if you need to make people believe you're doing a good job, you need to look at the numbers in a way that best reflects you doing a good job, whether you are or not. So that's how we end up with the unemployment numbers we have now. And the bottom line here also is if we were to look at it more realistically, if we were to count these folks, the unemployment number would be more around 10%. So just kind of keep that in mind. People are, and what's really interesting is by extension, what a lot of folks are saying relating to these unemployment numbers is, oh, great, look, all these wonderful things are going to happen. Well, we need to step back a little bit more realistically and say, is that really what's going to happen? And as someone who's going to be providing either, if you're trying to decide, for instance, I think these are important numbers to know. If you're someone who's trying to decide if you're going to do a buy and flip strategy or a buy and rent strategy, because if what I'm saying is true, you're likely going to be far more successful as a buyer who then becomes a landlord rather than a flipper, depending on your market, right? So these are things absolutely you want to keep in mind. Now, we're going to go ahead and talk about this a little bit more. We're also going to talk more about what the trend has been with the labor participation rate and how that affects unemployment. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I bet you have missed that commercial. It's been over a week where you haven't had that commercial in any shows. Boy, I'll bet you feel better that it's back. We are talking about the most recent unemployment numbers, their effect on real estate, and how they should affect our projections on what we should or shouldn't do relating to real estate. We already kind of talked about a CNN Money report, which obviously I will link to in the show notes for today's show. So if you would like to review those articles for yourself, head on over to therebelbroker.com, click on the read more link that'll be halfway down, and you'll be able to see links to all the articles, plus any other notes or things that were interesting about the topic we were talking about today. Now, unemployment rate is the lowest since 2007, the way it's currently recorded or calculated. To give you a little bit more insight into that, I'm also going to include a link in the show notes to shadowstats.com. I've referenced this site before in terms of unemployment calculation. They go even further in what they describe. Now they go through all the numbers, and there's different numbers that are used. Now the unemployment rate is calculated using a bunch of different methods. The one we are most beaten over the head with is the U3 number, and that invariably gives us the lowest unemployment rate. Then there's the U6 number, and what's interesting is there is no normal way. There is no standard way that unemployment has been calculated throughout our history. If you were to use the numbers that were used in 1984, the unemployment in 1980s, right throughout that time, we would have an unemployment rate closer to 10%. So it's an annoying thing. We take these things as assuming that they've always calculated it the same way. Sadly, they have not. Now, the folks here at Shadow Government Statistics give us three numbers. They give us the U3 number, which is the 4.6%. They give us the U6 number, which I think is the far more acceptable number to use at a minimum, and that gives us more like 10%. And then they have the Shadow Stats alternative number, which they put at 22.8%. So if you're interested in all that kind of stuff, absolutely go check it out. Again, there'll be a link to it. You can check out their content index. You can look at their commentaries, and you can check it all out. You can also they've also got other things relating to money supply, inflation, GDP, all these other kinds of things. But once you start just scratching the surface of how unemployment is calculated, you start to realize that they rig the calculation based on a number that they want to show you. The site describes it as the U3 unemployment rate is the monthly headline number. The U6 unemployment rate is the Bureau of Labor Statistics' broadest unemployment measure, including short-term discouraged and other marginally attached workers, as well as those forced to work part-time because they cannot find full-time employment. Now, for those of us out in the real world, walking through the malls and going through life and paying rent and paying the electric bill, that sure does feel like an important group of folks who need to be included in the calculation who are not. So take it for what it's worth and see what you think. I personally think that we're being fed too far rosy a picture, even with the numbers we're getting. So the number itself, I don't think, is really a valid representation. But I also think if you take a look at what makes the number we have what it is, even that should not give us a high level of confidence. The new jobs that compose the recovery, or this 4.6% number, are not nearly as good as the ones that we lost in the financial collapse. Now, that's according to an analysis by the New York Times in May. I'll, again, include a link to that article in the show notes for today's show. I believe we talked about that one. The jobs are, quote, part-time, temporary, or seasonal minimum wage positions offering scant benefits, mostly in the service sector. A few high-wage sectors are increasing, but much of the job growth is in employment that weakens the financial security of Americans instead of strengthening it. That really is the conclusion that really is most important to us as investors, because we need to understand the largest segment of the community that we can service, that we can help achieve their goals in terms of getting housing. And if we are believing this idea that there is a ton of folks out there who've gotten jobs that are just as good as the jobs we used to have before 2007, and therefore their buying power is going to be there, we're going to be wrong. Simply because they're not. These are a huge chunk of these folks are still not in a position to purchase a home. Now, we can also argue that that's not necessarily a bad thing, simply because we're not making enough new homes for folks to buy. But we're also in a situation where a lot of these folks who aren't in a financial position to really jump in and buy a house are being encouraged to do so anyway, with programs that are really pushing for making buyers out of these folks that are in difficult circumstances in terms of not really having jobs that are career oriented or giving them the benefits that they need. Now, here's the flip side of this. These folks get where they're at, I think, by and large. And I think that we're seeing a lot more people opting for renting. That's an important conclusion to know about, or if it's at least something to be aware of to decide for yourself whether or not the numbers you see spell out the same glowing neon sign to you as it does to me. This news does not yell, at least talking broadly across the entire country, sell people a house. It really is going to depend on your local market. If I have for instance, my actual on-site truth for me is it may be smart for me to sell my house, simply because that's the way the local truth is here. And I'm actually in a position where I think it's smarter to do it sooner rather than later, because of what we've talked about on the show previously, relating to where interest rates are likely to go and how when interest rates tend to go up, prices at the higher end tend to suffer the most. So for me, it makes sense for me to potentially get into that cycle now rather than later. In other parts of the country, depending on what's going on, obviously I'm in an area of bizarre high demand right now. If you're in an area that's less so, there may still be a higher impetus to rent. Now, granted, remember, we've talked about here, even in my area, what is being created is more rental homes, rental apartments. So not even homes. The housing units that have been created the most in my marketplace are apartment rentals. And I think that spells wonderful things for folks who are trying to rent their single family residential homes, because by comparison, living in these apartments stinks. So if you're in this kind of a marketplace, you also need to understand, who are you catering to as a landlord? How competitive are you against apartments? Because the closer you are in terms of life experience or the kind of experience you provide as a landlord with your housing product, if it's very similar to an apartment, you may find yourself being a little bit more challenged in terms of your price. And again, this all is based on the theory that I'm correct, that we're going to see more folks leaning towards renting because the jobs that are being created are really, and the unemployment numbers and the realities that underpin them actually reflect more of a scenario where rentals are likely to be something that folks are going to be more interested in. Great news if you're a renter or if you're a landlord who rents, but if you're in a market like mine where we've seen such an increase in apartments, you need to understand if you're threatened by that. Is an apartment a competitor to you? Are you someone who rents out a condo that could have been an apartment in a previous life? And if so, you may have to be more competitive in your pricing. You may actually have to worry about whether or not you can raise your rental rates this year, because you may not be able to. You may, given how many units are being created in my area, you may have to be thinking about, do I need to reduce my rent? Because the other truth is, in a place like Morgan Hill, which is really a bedroom community for places like San Jose, since all of these apartments are being built in South San Jose and in Sunnyvale and in Santa Clara, these folks can go and rent one of these apartments that is, in terms of lifestyle, giving them basically the same thing your condo is giving them, but it's giving them ridiculous proximity to where they probably work. Most folks who live here in Morgan Hill don't work here. They drive north to San Jose to work. So if you're someone who is renting a condo in Morgan Hill or any other community that's outside of the zone where everyone really tends to be working, you need to really analyze more carefully. And again, I don't want to get too specific into just giving advice to folks here in Silicon Valley, but I want you to take this as the same sort of thought process that you need to apply to wherever you are in the country. If this is a dynamic you're seeing where you are, understand where you stand as a landlord in terms of competition with apartment complexes. particularly if you've seen, as we have here, a big uptick in the number of apartments that are going to be for rent. And the opposite of this can be true as well. If you are in a city where they haven't built a ton of apartments and apartments are super thin on the ground and it's hard to get one, well, then maybe you as a landlord can fill in that niche. There's a huge demand for smaller housing perhaps in your area. So maybe that little 2-bedroom condo that you can get for a steal is going to make a great rental in your area because of the way that market's diced up. Does that make sense? So what I want you to do is not say, well, I can't really use that information, Robert, because that's true of your market, but not mine. We'll figure out what is true in your market and then figure out what steps you can take as an investor that make more sense. What I don't want you to do is to hear the headlines we're hearing now and believe, well, what's coming is a whole bunch of folks who are going to be able to buy houses because the job market has gotten so much better, because that doesn't seem to be actually at the core of what's true. Now, finally, in talking about these numbers, I want to take a second to chat about the participation rate. The participation rate is the lowest it has ever been in the time that this number has been calculated. Now, one other thing that may ring a bell, if you're a long-time listener to the show, now remember, this show's been going on since 2007. And we have reported here frequently that the participation rate is the lowest it's ever been. In fact, it's been going on for the entire 7 years I've been doing the show. Every quarter, or whenever the numbers come out, we talk about how we are now at the lowest participation rate in history. Well, at some point, you have to ask, well, wait a minute, Robert, you've been reporting that the participation rate is the lowest it's ever been every year for the last 7 years, the last 7 or 8 years. Yeah, I have. Because every single year it's gotten lower. It's gotten worse. So yes, every single year we've broken the previous record. And if you look at the chart, you can find it on, there's a variety of different places, but there's the civilian labor force participation rate. If you just Google that, and this is all government data. This isn't one political organization trying to beat up another political organization. But if you just look at what the data has been doing for the last 10 years, you can see it is down. It is the lowest it's ever been. The labor force participation rate has been at or below 63% for 31 straight months, the longest stretch since the 1970s. But we've also reached the lowest numbers in the entire time that they've been calculating this. We may have beaten it last year, I'm not sure, but the numbers are horrible in terms of participation rate. And remember, the lower the participation rate, the higher the math ends up indicating that the unemployment rate is, because you're not counting the folks who are not participating. So you're basically pulling people out of the math problem that would have come down on the unemployed side. So keep that in mind, because it's something you need to be aware of. It's not like those people just go away. They're still out there. They'll still walk on the streets. They still need a place to live. They still need to eat food. They need to put gas in their car. They need to pay their insurance. All of these things are still going on in their lives, but for whatever reason, we decide we're not going to count them. And in order to do all these other things in their lives, they are almost assuredly on some sort of public assistance or serving as a financial burden to someone else who is having to make their way through life and do all those exact same things. Those are our people. Those are the folks that are our customers, because everybody needs a place to live, and we as investors are trying to provide that service to folks. So just keep all of that in mind. It's absolutely data that I think gives you an inside scoop on what's really going on, because I don't hear a lot of other folks talking about this. There's an awful lot of buzz about celebrating the number without actually understanding what's under it and whether or not it actually represents a good thing, or not even thinking about a good thing. What does it represent in terms of what will it show us down the road? And if you look at the underpinnings, it's not going to usher in the great times that a lot of people seem to think it is, or at least I don't believe it is. All right, folks, I do appreciate that is some helpful information for you, informing some opinions on where you think real estate's going to be going in your area over the next year. I am forever thankful that you choose to spend a chunk of your day with me talking a little bit about real estate. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time.